All right, folks, we are still sort of gaining critical mass, but what I have to say isn't the most important part of the day, so I'm going to get it out of the way now. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our session today. It's the inaugural Live View session with the CLMA. For those of us who have been on a CLMA call before, Live View is going to be our new umbrella for all the type of programming that we've already been doing. That is professional development, education, with the aim of sort of nurturing our industry one professional at a time. We also have many new faces joining our call today, and we're so excited to have you here. For those of us who might be having their first brush with the CLMA today, this is the spiel. Canadian Live Music is the industry association representing all those individuals and organizations who bring live music to the stage. That's everyone from ticketing to promoters to agents to festivals and venues, agents, suppliers, and we are an advocacy body. So we represent the Canadian live music industry's voice to policymakers, and we work to entrench the value of live music to Canada's social, economic, and cultural fabric. So just some housekeeping, this session is being recorded. We will be available on it will be available on our website post-recording. It's a webinar format, which means that there's no chat for for viewers, attendees, but you can use the Q&A. So please direct your questions to that Q&A function. We would also like to thank the sponsors who made this session possible, and that is Ontario Creates and the Canada Council for the Arts. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our host, Grant Paley. He's the facilitator today. He's the co-founder and president of Midnight Agency, which is representing artists across multiple genres. They have offices in Toronto and Vancouver, and you might know some of Midnight's sick roster, which includes Dwayne Gretzky, Matthew Good, Adaria, Lucette, Luca Fagale, and Convict. Before starting at Midnight, Grant worked for another powerhouse Canadian agency, which is PACAN Entertainment Group. Grant, thank you so much for joining us today to lead the discussion.
Hey, thanks for that lovely introduction, Maddie. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the life cycle of a booking. We have some fantastic panelists here to chat about the lifestyle. We don't have the life cycle of it. We don't have much time, so I'm going to jump right into it. I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement. While we are all joining from different spaces across the country, I'm here in Toronto. I would like to acknowledge that the CLMA office is located in Ottawa on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence here reaches back to time immemorial. The CLMA recognizes the Algonquins as the customary keepers and defenders of the Ottawa River watershed and its tributaries. We honor their long history of welcoming many nations to this beautiful territory and uphold and uplift the voice and values of our host nation. Further, the CLMA respects and affirms the inherent treaty rights of all Indigenous people across this land. That was beautiful. I'm very honored to say that. It brings chills just saying those things right now. I'm sure we have people coming all over the country to join us here today. We have 4 fantastic panelists. We have Emma Polifroni, Director, Marketing and Promotions of Evenko in Montreal. Jackie Sakaguchi, President of Siegel Entertainment, and she's in Vancouver, I believe, today. Mahad, Jama, Talent Manager at ZENESOUL. Jama, I didn't find out where you're coming from today. Where are you? If you want to jump in. Oh,
I'm here in Toronto.
You're here in Toronto as well, okay. And lastly, we have Meeka Morgan, Executive Director of the amazing Two Rivers Remix Festival, who I have had so much experience booking with a bunch of artists. So we have 4 fantastic panelists here today to join us. We're going to be talking about 4 very important parts of booking a show. First of all, it's getting the show. Meeka is going to be presenting that for us. The second one is locking down the show, getting it done. Third is a very important part is marketing the show and selling those tickets and making sure people know it's out there. And lastly, managing the show. And Jackie is like the champion at taking care of artists. I have a lot of experience working with Jackie as well. So let's jump right into it. Meeka Morgan, Two Rivers Remix Festival. Please introduce yourself and let's talk about getting the show. How do artists approach you? How do artists get the show? Let's talk about that process.
Awesome, thank you, Quickstram. My name is Meeka Morgan. I'm the Artistic Director of Two Rivers Remix. I don't know if you're not familiar with Two Rivers Remix, we are based in Lequetin Territory, which is in the what is now known as Southern Interior of British Columbia. And last year, our town, our host community, was totally taken out by a fire, a very tragic fire, the Lytton fire. And so we embarked on a tour called the Movable Feast Tour, which allowed us to continue our work as well as allowed us to continue supporting our artists, but not only our artists, our production team, our staff, our directors, that many of them lost their homes or had family and are still evacuated even to this day. So um, I was really interested in being able to present in getting the show because our approach is so different than likely a lot of other organizations because we are Indigenous focused, centered, and led. And so when I was thinking about our process, I was realizing that in some ways not that we don't have a process, but we don't we don't have this concrete process that we operate in because our main purpose is to focus on building relationships and in building community as well as participating in mentorship. So our approach, like just for an example, when we look for a venue, we're often first looking at and investigating whether these different Indigenous communities that we would like to work in. First of all, we try to find out what the feeling is in terms of how they feel about us coming into their community, and how can we do that in the right way, so that they want to host us, they want to be our hosts. We have to develop that relationship first, and once we get to that place, which can take some time, then we have to look at the possible venues, which a reality in Canadian society is that a lot of our Indigenous communities don't have the resources and the infrastructure that allow these venues to be ideal. Because in our presentations, we completely set up our entire production and take it down in one day sometimes for our micro festivals that we have in community. So sometimes when we get to a possible venue that we're looking at, we might have to do a lot of kind of homework to make it feasible. Sometimes we have come to places where we thought we were going to have something at a particular venue in the community and then realized that there's too many barriers and we want to continue our good relationship with the community. So we actually have had to, in the past, go to a non-Indigenous community nearby and take a look at their infrastructure. Often it is a lot better, and not better, but it's more, it just has a lot more resources at their disposal. So we try to develop a relationship with them in terms of being a bridge to the Indigenous community and the nearby town, because often those bridges are not even developed. So just for example, like this year we had to do that. We had to approach Cache Creek, which is a very small rural community, but their park, which they thought was a little bit run down, was like probably 100 times better than what we were looking at in the nearby community, which is my father's community, so I'm very familiar with it. In terms of finding artists, we have a very kind of just organic approach, I guess you'd call it. We look at a few things. So we look at the region and the territory that we're in because we're trying to support emerging artists. We look at the representation that we want to bring to the area, in terms of like youth, women, LGBTQ, what is not being represented there. Well, we really look at building representation around developing places of safety, value, and tolerance for especially our residential school survivors. So it's very difficult because both my parents are from a residential school. They both attended for over 10 years. So I did my master's thesis on impacts on family of the Secwepemc people of my dad's age group. So I'm very familiar with the trauma that is prevalent in our, not just that generation of people that were forced to attend those schools, but the people that intergenerations of, well, that have been affected by that trauma continue to this day. So we look at what kind of representation do we need to ensure that those people feel held and relatable. So we look at things that content that is relatable as well. We also try not to be censor different views, because in indigenous, like Indian country, what we call, there's very many perspectives and unique perspectives of how they express their experience based on those unique perspectives about where they've come from, as well as the different generations. So we want to reflect that in the curation of the music. For example, like, I want to make sure that there's survivor and elders that are part of our lineups that can effectively share their story about how when they were trailblazing, they didn't have, the internet or ways to share their music. They actually had to leave their communities to be able to do that. And they were forced to, many times they were already forced to have had to leave their communities because of residential schools. So their experience is very different than now a lot of our youth. Like, for an example, my son is living in my late father's home, which is nearby to me. And it's on a family property that my family has been there for over 165 years, but in a way forcibly, because it is a federal Indian reserve. He has the ability to share his music in so many different ways without actually having to leave his lands and community, which I feel has a lot of benefits. It can be difficult, it can be a bit isolating, but at the same time, our people have been forced to leave our homes for so long that it's a real change. And I feel like it's a welcome change, because a lot of our young people do want to build community. They do want to, they do take very seriously the relationships that they have in their lives. So in terms of artists, I encourage them to get a hold of us on our just general Two Rivers Remix email if they want to send me information about themselves, or sometimes it will be other artists that bring them to my attention, or it will be even friends that bring other people to my attention. But what we really look at is the work that they're doing, and what kind of perspectives that they're bringing. Our festival focuses on contemporary Indigenous music, so we don't we definitely have traditional aspects involved for sure, and we don't that's not a barrier or anything for us. We just want to focus on contemporary expressions of continued evolving Indigenous culture. So how are people telling their stories? The uniqueness of their stories. And I think that's what we really want to reflect in our curation, is that we're not just one kind of pan-Indian movement just because we're all contemporary. We want to show the diverse, unique experiences that are from people from all over Turtle Island.
Right on, Meeka. Our time is over for this, but I really realized it was really touching in terms of where your community and where your festival is coming from, in terms of the artists that are approaching you and the artists and how to approach you and what you're looking for. It's a really unique perspective in terms of the type of festival that you're running. Is there a best practice, just really quickly, on how artists approach you with that information? Is there a best way? Is it through email? Do you like EPKs? Like, what are the best things to present to you as a festival and as a group for you to consider them for your lineup?
Just a respectful note of introduction, where they're from. If they have an example of a live performance, that's great. But even if they don't, just an example of their work. The more information they can provide right away is definitely better for me. If I can see as much as possible in their first introductory email, providing a way I can get a hold of them personally. Yeah, all those things are really important. Just having a really good holistic introduction to you and your work and what you do and what what you want to represent. I think that's definitely the most important for me.
Meeka, thank you so much for your insight. Everyone that's here, Meeka and I have worked on several projects together, her and her partner over there, Morgan. We've done so many wonderful things with you and Two Rivers Remix and DJ Shub. Just want to thank you for your time and your perspective. It's really appreciated. The second part of our presentation is locking down the show. Mahad is going to show us a presentation that in regards to agreements, contracts, and financials. These are important things, contracts. I run a program with the Humber College students, and this is a big part of the things that we talk to them about is contracts. It's good to have these things in place so everybody is on the same page. Mahad, please take it away.
Thank you, Grant. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen here. Just a moment. Can we all see it okay?
Yeah, looks good, Mahad.
Okay, I can't really get to the play button, so I'll just go down from here. All right, so my name is Mahad. I am a talent manager for ZENESOUL, whose artists I've been working with for over 3 years. Yeah, since we've been working together, she's been able to gain, a lot of streams. That's helped her get more shows and bookings. And I'm just going to take you through a bit of what happens after you connect with someone who is booking you for a show. So what we'll discuss here is like two types of agreements or documents. So first being the performance contract and a writer. So performance contract here, let me just have an example and we'll just go through it together. All right, so do we see it all okay? Good. Okay, so this is an example from Ontario Presents. They have a sample contract which you can review for your reference when you're either drafting your own or receiving one from the person who is booking you. So in the beginning, it just kind of has some description of who is involved with the show, who the contact information is, and then we want to get into some more of the finance. So there's different ways that you can be paid as an artist or an artist you manage. And the first being, just like a guaranteed fee, which they have as an example here, where you get a specific amount of money for your show. There are other options that you can, you can be paid with, being a split agreement. So you have the straight split agreement where you just don't get paid your guaranteed fee up front and you get paid split on the box office. Or you can get a guarantee plus a split, which is when you receive a bit of a guarantee, but then later on after expenses are paid, you receive another split on top of that. And then there is a guaranteed against percentage. So that is also called known as a versus agreement. And this is where they look at different factors into what your split is going to be, what split you'll be provided towards at the end. So that is a different conversation. It can get pretty intricate, but going down the contract more, we have, some clauses that can be in there, exclusivity, making sure that you are performing here and you're not performing somewhere else. That's going to take away, the guests coming into that specific venue. Next, you want to see some of these things in your contract with regards to the production and what is being provided. This is also when we look at the writer, we'll see some of these things in there too. So then there may be some publicity that which the promoter or the venue can provide for your show and marketing. And when they do this, they would want specific deliverables. So these things can be outlined in the contract too. Another big thing is the merchandise. So in the venue, there is oftentimes opportunities for you to sell your merchandise. And because you will be outperforming and your team will be there, helping you out, it's not easy to, sell your merchandise at the same time. So they tend to have someone there that's part of the venue. And there is an agreement you will make where they will be selling your merchandise on your behalf and taking a percentage from that. So there will be also this is actually a good thing to look at for photographs and recordings. As we've seen before, sometimes you would want to get some content to make sure like this is how I perform. It's put it in my EPK when I'm pitching out for other shows. How does that work? So you want to make sure that you are able to have a videographer, photographer there, and to make sure that that's allowed and that's in the contract. There are other things too which you can definitely take a look at. This is a great resource on Ontario Presents. There are different things that you can go in there. I'm just gonna highlight the rider, which is next, which can be put on top of this contract when you are negotiating and coming upon an agreed presentation. So if I switch over, do you guys see the next? Perfect. All right, so this is a rider. So what a rider is basically, it goes on top of a contract and it just has some more specific technical details on what you need to make sure your show goes well and how you are accommodated. So this is an example actually I found a few years ago online, and what was really cool about it was how detailed it got. So this is, I think it is, I'm not sure too familiar with this organization. I think it's set up in a way to, for an example, but what we have here first is the production part of the rider. So in this side, they have, an introduction of, what is going to be in this rider, some more details of the context, some general conditions. So this is very important. So for example, my artist, her name is ZENESOUL. Though it's 2 words, it's put into one. So it's all one word and only capital Z, right? So when we are marketing these things out, we want to make sure that the branding is in line with what we're putting out with, the recognition of her name. This is something you can put in your general, conditions, which they said, hey, we want our logo to be in all caps, just one word. So when you're putting out anything, make sure that that's correct.
About 2 minutes here.
Okay, I'm gonna breeze right through this. So, okay, so the next important part is making sure you have like a schedule ready that's either given to you by the venue or the promoter, and understanding some of your technical aspects. So the technical writer is a big part of this portion. So you want to make sure you have a backline either given to you by the venue or provide what you will need from your show. So this here, they have an example of the different instruments that they would like to have, the IEM in-ear monitors, and some of the audio-visual aspects. And then you can also put together a list which can show exact, components with the different, you see there's different parts of the drums and whatnot, and a kind of layout of what we want it to, our stage to look like. And then hospitality writer. I won't get too much into this, but this can be for your green room, for what you like to have as snacks in your green room, and it's also, you want to be careful of how you put this together, especially when you're coming up as a new artist. There are always stories of amazing hospitality writers by these bigger artists, known artists, right? Someone doesn't want any green M&Ms or whatever, right? So there are different things you can put in there. This is a great resource. Definitely check it out. I'll provide it to the facilitators to, put in with the recording. But before we leave, I want to talk about a couple of things here. So just from my personal experience, I have some, things that, I came across that, maybe you should look out for, some red flags, or, what is normal. So definitely the one of the biggest red flags you can find is the lack of early communication, open communication. You want to make sure that this is someone you're going to be working with for who knows how many months, or could be weeks. But if there isn't an open communication set, what is it going to look like when the show comes, when there's high stress and when there's all of these things that are moving parts that are going along? We want to make sure that from the beginning on, if I send an email, there should be a respectable time where it comes back, and vice versa, right? You want to have an open line of communication. Another thing is, and mind me if I'm going over time, just let me know. So
Totally fine.
Okay. In
It's all
terms
good.
of,
There's a lot to cover here. I'm
there's
looking at
a lot to cover.
You could talk about this for an hour.
Exactly. Yeah. So the other thing is, sometimes you could be approached to do a show where the person approaches, instead of offering, a fee, or they may ask you to pay for this performance. Hey, I see you haven't reached this level yet, but we like your music and we want you to perform, but we want this sort of fee to cover our expenses. Now, for me, I personally would avoid those, just because unless you see a really good value for you doing this opportunity, it is most likely, not worth your time and investment. These are two things that I guess I can say off the top of my head. Another big thing is just making sure that you understand every element of the show, like who are the headliners, what is the order of the show, when is your artist, or when are you performing? All of these things help to make sure that you're being put in the best light. Thank you.
Right on. Thank you for that. And Mahad, one thing I was sort of thinking is an important thing to talk about is deposits. Make sure there's a clear understanding about collecting deposits. Make sure you ask for that in advance. That's a way to just protect you and financially, and make sure that you have a commitment from that person, especially if you're dealing with someone you've never dealt with before. I really suggest it. It's always good to collect your deposits. Writer, by the way, I loved it. I was looking through it, I'm like, wow. It's always good to have your contracts reference the rider. Make sure it says as per. Buyers will look there and cross things off. They won't, and they will do. But always make sure. I always like to send the rider in advance to a buyer so they don't get it afterwards, and they're like, "Whoa, what is this?" They get really freaked out after they see all that information. So I really appreciate that. I wish we had more time to cover. Again, there's so much to go over. We have a couple comments and questions about perhaps getting some templates from you. I also have some as well. We can provide Maddie and the folks at the CLMA, maybe with some links to some contract templates so you can start making your own. Thank you for that, Mahad. Thank you so much. Emma from evenko. So welcome. We're going to talk about the third part of the the life of a booking, marketing. Wow. I mean, I just want to start off as an agent. When I see a nice fat marketing budget, that actually makes me very happy. When I see it's little tiny, I get very, very worried. So let's talk about the importance of the marketing. And I know, you could put shows on sale and the artist is so popular, boom, it sells out and you literally spend nothing. There's other cases though where you put a show on sale and you're like, oh my Lord, we sold 10 tickets. Okay, good thing we have a big marketing budget. Let's talk about that. Emma.
Yeah, great. So hi everyone. I've been working for evenko for the last 10 years. For those who don't know evenko is pretty much a promoter in Quebec. We work with Live Nation. We're actually we're very partners with them. We also work with AEG shows. and with special projects. So the NCAA is coming up in November, Disney on Ice, Feld Entertainment, and we run 6 large festivals in Montreal, including Osheaga, Jazz Fest, and Montreal that's coming up in my God, February already, March, and then Heavy Montreal, etc. So marketing, like you said, is, you know, we have the club shows, which are considered smaller budgets in smaller venues, such as like either 500 venue or 3,000. And those budgets vary between $500 to sometimes like $10,000 max. Okay, those budgets are provided by the booker. He'll let us know once they book the show what the budget is. And then when it's arena shows, so at the Bell Center, which could be roughly between 14,000 people capped to 22,000 if we're doing 360, then the budgets can go up to $50,000, $60,000. Once we have a confirmation of the show, we speak directly with the marketer of the show. That's usually the marketer of the tour, for example. And we'll talk about announcement, which is normally done on a Monday. And then we'll talk about the pre-sale strategy, which sometimes they'll do Amex on their end, and then we'll do a pre-sale versus with evenko members. So that's about 400,000 people. So we'll do the pre-sale, and then we do the on-sale, which is normally on the Friday. So what we want to do is once we announce the show, it's have an awareness campaign. So the awareness campaign is letting people know, hey, this is coming up. So we usually go through social media, through radio. Sometimes we do a TV campaign, through digital, which is much more targeted audiences, people who listen to Spotify, for example, past purchasers of other similar shows, we'll target them specifically, and sometimes outdoor, depending on the budgets. To go really loud for the announcement, we'll do a beat the box office radio promotion on especially radios that the artist plays on. And that's something like, even though we've seen some radio kind of drop a little bit, it's important to the artist because some radios are really pushing for that artist. And so we want to sort of, you know, kind of provide them that beat the box office. Winners get to win tickets before the show goes on sale. And then we go on sale now Friday. So everything kind of leads up to that big on sale now with our ticket. And that's, our link to buy tickets. So that kind of completes the 360. We make sure the website's, you know, active there and all that. Afterwards, depending on the show, we'll go with, you know, a small maintenance plan. Normally, let's say they're releasing an album, a single's doing really well. One of the performers is playing at, I don't know, I'm trying to think, like the Grammy Awards. Sometimes we'll do a maintenance. Holidays is a huge maintenance plan normally where they're like, hey, let's revive the show. We'll do the same sort of similar thing, a 360 marketing plan that includes radio, TV, outdoor, digital, and then we'll have a big targeted audiences on our newsletters. Sometimes we'll do even, you know, some native advertising with different blogs, different articles, etc. So that would be more maintenance. But where we make the most ticket sales, especially when shows are not sold out at the announcement and on sale, is the 4 weeks, 6 weeks leading up to the show. So that's really when we'll, you know, spend 60% of our marketing budget. And that's when we're reminding people, hey, the show's coming up. We'll go even more targeted. We'll look at sales, ticket counts. You know, we'll look at ticket prices. Is there certain prices that are not selling? We'll look at rescaling. Like, we'll really try to get together with the ticketing department as well, with the booker, to kind of be like, okay, how can we make sure that on our back end, we're strong, we're saying the right things. In terms of material, we do an order directly with the tour. You know, we're not going to tell Taylor Swift how to, you know, what picture she's going to, we don't have that like luxury. She knows what she's doing. She's a brand in itself. But, you know, we'll localize it internally. We have a graphics team who will localize it. TV spot, you know, we're French, right? So we'll do the translations, we'll make sure. And then we always send everything back for approval because the Taylor Swift team, for example, needs to see everything and make sure that it's all up to brand. For the club shows, sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, the emerging artists.
The club level. Yeah.
Yes. So, we've kind of changed our strategies. We used to do a lot of like the papering and the old fashioned kind of thing, but now we're trying to be more green. we're much more on the digital audience. Like we elaborate our audiences, and we find different ways of messaging to those people that will not just be like we'll push a single, for example, and be like, you know, that will push the venue, because sometimes people just feel like watching an artist in a really nice venue. We'll look at past performances and show performances. So what's great about digital is that you can show different things. It's not like traditional media where it's an ad on a billboard and that's that, and you have to kind of Google who this artist is. And anyways, our budgets are way too small. If we're doing outdoor, minimum hitting 10 grand, right? Which is almost our whole budget. So we'll go much more on targeted ads with, you know, some pre-rolls, some snippets of things that this performer has done. We really look at our ecosystem. Like, we're very lucky. evenko's been around for, you know, close to 15 years. So we have a nice ecosystem of past purchasers that we can talk to directly for the past 2 years. So it's like, if you went to, you know, Taylor Swift, you might like this emerging artist actually at a club show. So we'll speak to that part of that audience more specifically and send them more information and try to, you know, work their way out. We don't sell out every club show. Some of them, look, it's hard, you know. Yeah, but we try to find like things that work, and that's the beauty of digital. But right now with our club shows, we're purely digital, and it's been working quite well for us.
Right. We got a couple more minutes here before we move on to the last part, but
yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what do you find are the most effective things that artists and their teams can provide in terms of content? Like, is it a song? Is it that shout out video? Is it, what do you find in that, especially in that last 4 weeks? Because I agree with you. You know, I see so many, especially right now, where we're selling so many tickets in the last 4 weeks, especially at the club level and the venue level, maybe 1,000 and under. What is the most effective content that people can use to get to sell those tickets?
So definitely like a well snippet of a performance works really well, but what engages our fans a lot are sometimes personal content. So an artist, you know, wanting to come to Montreal, talking about Montreal, sometimes that could be really sort of, you know, interesting and works quite well. Just not every artist is going to do it. Obviously the bigger artists, they rarely do, but it's kind of something nice that works, has great engagement. If not, it's very performance based, seeing something live that they do. It doesn't have to be long because people are busy and they don't have time, but if you can find like a 10-second of something really strong or good, that could really help us for the back end.
Any finishing, any closing comments that you might have for those younger artists out there who are just getting going and where they might want to put their marketing dollars when they're just starting out? You know, we're probably talking to a lot of people here that are just getting going. What is sort of the base level where you want to invest your money on a local level as you're developing your band and your brand?
That's a really good question. You know, you have to start small. You got to grow, sort of like if you're looking at a social media platform, like you kind of build those fan base, engage, and sort of build that slow. It's not going to happen overnight. So it's kind of engaging with your fans constantly and having people add on. That's how people kind of spread the word internally. So digital is really where it's at in that, where you're building and building and building. And then, you know, once you really want to make an impact in Montreal, let's say in a city, that's where we can go loud with 360. But if not, it would be very on the digital end and growing that fan base slowly.
Right on. Emma, that was really awesome. Again, we're compacting so much information into a small little snippet, but what a great 360. You work at so many different levels, from the Taylor Swifts all the way to, you know, Let's Go and Petit Campus and all those fantastic Montreal venues that we've been at till 2 in the morning, listening to amazing bands and DJs. So thank you so much, Emma.
Thanks.
Lastly, Jackie, you're my favorite person in the entire world. This is our fourth part, managing the show. I mean, you've got the booking, you've got the, you know, the contracts, you've got the marketing. Now it's advancing and making sure everybody's on the same page. I think, you know, an important thing that agents do is provide all the information that people like Jackie needs. And when she has all the proper information, she can manage a show, she can make the artists are there on time. Everybody's on the same page, because the worst thing is getting phone calls on the night of a show saying, where's my rider? Why isn't this working out? Jackie is one of the best. Jackie, please take it away and tell us what it's like to manage the show and what are the best practices.
Thanks, Grant. Well, I think you're saying that also managing a bunch of grants artists doing the advancing. I think the biggest term that we all will hear if you're on the ground coming right to the bottom of the full circle is the advance. Now it touches upon everything that Mahad, Emma, and Meeka has already touched upon. With the advancing, or if we're the person who's managing the show on the ground, first identify who are we. So we can be the venue promoter, which I think would be Meeka, where you are the venue and you are the promoter, that this is your festival. So if you're that person on the ground managing the show for the venue or for the promoter, then you also have the promoter rep, that could be Emma, and that's the concert that they're putting on, or a show that could be in a venue that's not necessarily their venue, so they have a representative. Or for Mahad, then you're the artist who is there. So everybody has all of their own different pieces that bring together, but everybody who we're discussing here, essentially we're all going for the same goal for a successful show, and we're all working here as a team. So it starts with that contract that would come down from the agent. Now the agent has thought about everything. Being in Canada specifically, we can look at what does the artist look like? Where are they on their cycle or their tour? Is this a one-off? Is this a fly-in? Is this a drive-in? We do find a lot more in Canada as opposed to the United States, that we could have a lot more fly-ins or one-offs because Canada itself is so large. So the distance between going on a tour bus is massive. So your day schedule might look a bit differently, the same as their kit or their production and the rider that's going to be that we're going to be putting on for the show. So when we start at the contract level, starting at the contract level, so on both sides, so this is at the artist, the date, the venue, you could have a stack of, if you're a production manager or if you're representing as a promoter rep, to keep yourself in line, that you need to just have all of this. You think that it would just be common knowledge, but you want to keep all of this information at the top of that stack of that show that you're advancing before this. Now the advance can start, I would say usually at least 2 weeks, maybe prior to that, when everything gets locked in. This is just like the very high level. Marketing is already well underway. All of the tour logistics are well underway. Now we're just getting into that time frame that we're setting out what the stage production is going to look like, what things are going to look like when we're on the ground. So this has already been written in the contract. The artist, the date, event, the event schedule is usually pretty vague at this point. This would just be for knowing what time the doors are, what time the headliner is going on. That goes back to the logistics of the artists on the road trying to plan their travel schedule. Everything else that's would be part of the contract is very important to go full cycle back to the settlement. So we start with the advancing, we end the show with that settlement. These are the two most labor intensive and detail oriented parts of it. Running the show should be the easiest part, because this is what we're planning for during the contracting advancing. Now we look at things like the compensation and the additional provisions being the technical and hospitality rider, like Grant touched upon. What are we referencing in that technical and hospitality rider, and what is that compensation? Is it a flat guarantee, a door deal, or a versus deal? Now this is very, you need to pay attention to this on what that compensation to the artist is going to be, especially what is included in that deal and what is going to be a show cost that's included in the technical rider and the hospitality rider. And that is why it's good to get that in advance, because you don't know if in this technical rider that you've agreed upon, they need a full sound, light, video wall kit that you were not anticipating for in this budget. The same with hospitality. You don't know if all of a sudden this is going to be 90 additional guests with a full-blown party and 16 bottles of Cristal that are going to be coming out. You want to have eyesight on that at the get-go, because artists at all levels are going to be all over the place. Now you do have the ability to then strike it, kind of reel it in a little bit about what we can do for a festival. You strike that and you call it a festival hospitality, that you're gonna get what's given with that festival, or you work with a certain budget and then you could strike on those requirements for the technical and hospitality based upon what your budget for that event or that deal can be. Merchandising will also go down to your compensation at the end. It's going to be part of the settlement. Usually it happens afterwards. You'll have that in the contract of what is the deal going to be. Usually it's a soft good, hard good split at a 75, 85. And it's also important, if you're advancing the show, who is the seller? Do we have an in-house seller at our venue, or is it a cost directly to the artist? So usually if you were going to have merchandise as an artist, you would advance that the house then provides you with the seller, that you would give them a flat fee. You also want to, if you are the artist is the seller, think about things like your POS system and your float, and how it's going to be easy for the artist to work with that one-off merch seller that's going to be on site. That usually gets settled after the show because you want to keep your merch open as people are leaving. Billing, announcement, on sale, and promotion, that's all what Emma was talking about, and that becomes this line item in your settlement, and usually is broken down. You get handed a binder about what billboards, what marketing, what digital were in the plan prior to the actual show. It will also touch upon the radius clause, which at this point doesn't really matter. That's just more about for the artist to see where and how the distance that they can play in for your show. That's as a promoter rep, you want to make sure that you have that just so you're not going to be working with any competing events or other festivals that will be going on in the area. And on the contract, it's very important to have that event contact. Who is advancing the show? Who is a representative from the artist advancing the show? And who is it going to either be the venue or the promoter rep? This comes down to then the documents. We'll get into the documents based upon what is the needs of those artists. We look at our venue run of show. That is going to be how much time do we need for load-in? Are we building a video wall that we're going to need additional time? This can also go into the budget as well of our venue. Do we have union staff? How many people do we have on call? What do we need in terms of the runner? What do we need for additional sound techs? Sometimes the artists will also be traveling with their own sound engineer, which is great, but that's also then what are we patching into our house sound? What are we bringing, and what kind of mixer do we have, and anything from the backline that's required for us to get. So that's important to understand when we're looking at how much time is needed for that load-in, how much time is needed for the load-in, the sound check, and the line check, and then to run that show. This is also a kind of a Jenga game about how many people are actually going to be on the show. Do we have an opening act? Do we have two? Do we have the headliner? Do we have somebody closing out the show? And what do all of their technical riders look like? And what are we building on that stage? So just an example of that stage plot, which is important. Stage plot is very specific in the placement of the artists, and then also you should focus on the input list. Now, the input list is the lines that are going to be going. This is for your sound tech. That's important because this goes down to what is your line check and what is your sound check. Now, your line check is just making sure that all of your inputs are working with the sound system. You can get away with that. Usually you'll have a line check at a very tight scheduled festival because there's not enough time to do a full sound check. And a full sound check is going to be more when there's people representing the band, whether it's just the band or the artist. So then they can actually hear what's coming out of the mix and what's going into their in-ear monitors or what's just going to be to their stage wedges. But it is important when we think about the other people that we're working with every day, is a very important person is your sound tech and your patch guy. Now, your patch guy is the guy who can look at your input list and know exactly what's going to be going into the mix. And this, you can even see how big this band is and what we're going to need for placement on stage. So your best friend usually ends up being your patch guy. The unsung heroes are your sound guys on stage. Not to say that doesn't also include your lighting guys at festivals and nighttime shows, and VJs as well if you're running visuals. Let's go. Hospitality rider, once again, that's something that's in advance. So you're doing everything advance, exactly what it sounds like. Your hospitality rider, you're looking what's going to be expensive. Do you have a set budget? Can you just go for it all? Booking your runner who's going to be buying that, and then setting up your hospitality backstage area. The balance of that is also how many rooms do you have in the venue? How much do you have to spend? And then how much time do you have to set up? And what are those overall needs and what can be shared? The venue staff, so that would be the production managers, the sound technicians that are with the venue, also the ones that are traveling with the artists. Now, depending on the level of artists, you might be a very small, tight crew that you can be a band and maybe you're traveling with just a front of house, or you do it all your own, or you are just a traveling band and you rely on that house technician to run your sound. So that's important during your advance to know that, so you are going to the venue to set up exactly what you need to run that show effectively, that you're not just a band, you are a crew, you are a team. And whether you have that, we together are all a team. So that's why you can rely on that house sound technician if you're not at that level where you're traveling with your own. The runner is somebody who comes with that venue. If you are on tour, they're very important. If you yourself, you have been on your tour bus overnight and then another night and then another night, he or she is the small things, any from buying that hospitality, getting your wash and fold laundry dropped off and picked up. They essentially just put it all together about all the needs that you have, and they, for that day, are part of your team. The merch seller is whether you were at a certain level of artist too, you could travel with your own merch seller. Merch is a very big, you can bring in a lot of revenue as a band from merch. So if you have your own merch seller, they travel, they set up, they do merchandising, which is the display that would be on site, and your dedicated person there to sell all of your merch and add another revenue stream to your tour. Front of house and ticketing, we work with them. Ticketing has been on sale since the on sale date of your show and concert. We work with them mostly at the settlement of the show. We'll keep in touch just to make sure where ticket sales are at. Now you can build out a show. If we're selling an arena, you can build out, you can put a certain amount on sale, you can expand. That also then would mean how much more additional sound might you need to bulk up your production if you're trending to sell at another tier or level, or if we need to build out the venue a little bit more. But then that also goes into the settlement about that's more production cost. But that's a good thing but being able to tier it allows us to grow that sale and grow the production that we're going to have. And that is something that you keep in mind when you go into the settlement, which is all the costs and all of the expenses. So you start the show with leading up to the show is all in the advancing. That is the technical, and that is the hospitality, that is the logistics. When you arriving, how much time do you need? Do we have all the crew and staff booked? When you get there, then now it's production load in. It is the, are they arriving on a tour bus? For now we need breakfast, production load in, sound check, backline. And when you're building out your run of show, you're starting from the top from the bottom. So you'll start sound checking and placing your headliner so that when you get to your second opener to now your opener is set and ready to go for doors. So you essentially kind of flipped it. So now you can move from your opener to your supporting act to that headliner. This whole time is you are preparing for that settlement. It's ABC. It's always been closing. It's always be closing. So we're going from the settlement is what are we anticipating now to pay out for the artist? Is it a flat guarantee? Is it a door deal, or is it the versus deal? Now the flat guarantee would just be whatever your agreement is with the promoter rep, that is what you're getting. So it's pretty much on the promoter rep and the house to then, keep those expenses down. Going into the versus deal would be if you go over on door sales or the NBOR, which is the net box office revenues after all the documented expenses, is if the revenues are greater than your flat guarantee, you are taking home some of the profit. So as an artist, you also want to kind of keep those expenses down, because then your takeaway could be larger than just that guarantee, but you do have that cushy net of what your guarantees are.
Right on. That was a quick one. I mean, the one thing that I got from all of that is look at how much information that needs to go back and forth between multiple people. That is, and Jackie, what you do is really keep a show on track. I want to go back to one of your points of advancing a show 2 weeks to 1 week before. I think that's so important. You have to understand a lot of these clubs, they have shows every single night, and they're speaking to people like Jackie almost every single day on multiple emails. So the important thing is to do that advance as soon as possible, in advance as possible. Jackie, give us the number one thing that falls apart typically at a show when you're advancing? What's that one item that you're always like, oh, how does this always happen?
I would say maybe it's not an item, but it's a thing, it's assumption. If you look at that somebody read something, you need to spell things out clearly. If you absolutely know that you need a keyboard stand and it's part of your backline requirements, and you just go back and say, hey, so we're good with backline, which is if it's the instruments or amps, and yep, it's okay. If you know that you do need that keyboard stand, put it into the notes as well to then spell out that backline, be top level to help people. We're all on the same team. And like Grant said, if you're at the venue or if you're on tour as well, you're going through these advancing. A tour can be very tight as well, that artists are doing back-to-back-to-back shows. The same with the venue. They can be doing back-to-back-to-back shows with different artists. So you want to make sure that we have everything that's, too long-winded, and avoid too long didn't read. So if it is just to the point, backline required, keyboard stand, floor tom. You want to make sure that you're putting that on top to help people out so it doesn't get missed, because there really shouldn't be any issues or fires on site because you have gone through this. You know your artist and your tour so well, you know your venue so well. You can also help out a bit if you know they're on the road, about giving them a little heads up about if Wi-Fi is strong or not. If Wi-Fi is weak and now you have this touring DJ who is expecting to come to the venue and download their whole video, that's not going to happen. That can set you back. So these little details that you know specific to your own artist, your own tour, your own venue, it's good to share that information. And then once you're on site, you're kind of just dealing with everything that comes. I remember being at an event in France. So, you know, it's also knowing your audience and knowing who you're dealing with. And none of the dressing rooms were set up, or we didn't have everything that we needed. And when I'm talking to the promoter up there and saying, oh, but what we talked about this in email, blah, blah, he's like, I'm going to stop you there. Forget about whatever was said in email. We're here right now. And then that makes you realize exactly that, like, we are not protected by any kind of paper trail when we just need to get the show done. So what can you do to find solutions? Look around you, be proactive, and see what you can use to make sure that everything can just come together. There is such value in the networking and your ability to call up a friend and help out, or your CDJs aren't working, but you know somebody in town who might have a pair that you can borrow. That is who you're relying on. And karma's gonna come around, and that's gonna help you out later when you need to make a call or somebody calls you and you can help out.
Right on. Well, we're going to stop there for this portion of it. And, you know, just to summarize everything here, thank you everyone for all your perspectives. Meeka, you know, from finding the gig, I think what I got from you is find out who you're pitching and who you're talking to, whether it be community, whether it be financially, whether it be the lineup. Really understand as an artist who you're pitching to and what their needs might be. You might not be the perfect band for their lineup. That's the one thing I got from Meeka. You know, Mahad, man, your detail, what you showed us, it's so important to have that contract in place. A contract is an understanding between two people, and that they both feel good about the arrangement they've made, and it's on paper, whether it be your friend, your colleague, or someone you just met. Having something written down is going to make sure that everything is met and everyone understands what their commitments are. There's no arguments at the end of the day, but sometimes there are, let's be honest. Emma, you know, your marketing, to go through all that, it's such an important part of the process. It's such an important part of what we do. And I really appreciate you telling us about what top level artists are going through all the way to the club level. So thank you. And Jackie, I can't stress enough how important the details are of advancing a show. It kind of goes back to the contract. I feel like advancing and the contracting process almost go hand in hand, and making sure that you're communicating in advance so you can avoid any sort of problems. I just want to let everybody know that's watching, we have a Q&A. I've got some questions going right now. We've got about 15 minutes here to field some more if anyone has any, but I do have a few here that we can just jump right into. Let's see here. So for smaller venues, 150 to 300, Michael, thank you for your question. For smaller venues, 150 to 300, what is the ideal time frame to start promotions in this new post-COVID world? It used to be a few months these days, but it seems to be a shorter time frame. Emma, I think we talked a little bit about it, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit about what might be a good strategy at that club level, where you might only have $250 at the most to market a show. So what might be the best practices at that level?
Yeah, so great question. We've noticed that there has been a stronger walk up. So people are deciding more last minute than they normally did. So keeping, let's say you got 250, you're spending, I would say 80% of that budget 4 or 5 days prior to the show, which is what we do. We're letting it out. We're letting people know that the show's coming on the announcement, but then really our hard dollars will go on the back end. Like sometimes you have even just a week to let people know that the show's coming on a digital level only, because you don't have much money. So we have seen that it's with COVID that, you know, but with arenas, we're still going with the 4 to 6 weeks because it's bigger venues and we have more tickets to sell. But the walk up is important. We'll even do the day of, we'll do day of organic posts, day of digital posts. You know, we'll even mention stuff about the weather. We'll kind of try to convince people that are sort of in between, not making up their mind yet. So yeah, I would say 4 or 5 days prior to the show for sure.
Can you tell me a little bit too, some people here may not know, but we practice a lot, even at this level, an on-sale date, a pre-sale date,
Yeah.
and an announced date, a pre-sale, and then an on-sale.
On sale now, yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit more to everyone here, what those 3 things mean and what?
Yeah. So the announcement is we're letting everyone know, you know, via social media normally. Usually the artist even says it when he announces a tour, so he puts it on his platforms, and we're saying, hey, you know, I'm coming to Montreal on this date, so we're announcing that, you know, the show's coming. When it's a tour that we know is going to be really loud and exciting, we even sometimes do like a little tease the day before to kind of get people engaged. But if not, it's like an announcement. You know, normally it's a Monday. We send out a press release written sometimes by the artist's management team. And we let people know at 7 a.m. We do a social media post announcement. We put it on our website, etc. Then a pre-sale is, so there's fan pre-sales. So normally artists have some, let's say they already have Montreal people that are, you know, have a newsletter that they've already become members of. They'll do like a pre-sale exclusive to the artist. Spotify pre-sale as well. Sometimes we do Amex because of a credit card. So it really depends on those deals, but our pre-sale is our evenko pre-sale. That's our evenko membership. It's every Thursday. It leaves at 10 a.m. and they have, basically you get tickets before the public on sale. So it's reserved seating. We'll normally put maybe 2,000-3,000 tickets, and it's those who are members of evenko that get the link and get to buy tickets pre-sale. What's great about pre-sale is that it gives us an idea of on the on-sale. The stronger your pre-sale is, gives you a nice idea if the on-sale is going to be strong or not. And then once the pre-sale passes, usually that's 24 hours. Fan pre-sale usually is like 48 hours, and then Amex would be like 72 hours. And then we go public on sale on the Friday or the Thursday, but normally now it's a Friday, and it's, you know, it's a social media post, and it's letting everyone know that the show's on sale now.
Right on. Just a comment here from Caroline said, I can listen to Emma talk all day. Thanks for the extremely valuable and interesting insights on the live music and marketing. So it's such an important part. Meeka, Mahad, I have a question here that I think both of you can probably jump in here. This is from Jess C. I would like to know more about how people new to the industry can get connected with venue bookers and accepted, especially for smaller venues and emerging bands. And this goes beyond venues. I think, you know, how do people get connected with you as a talent manager? How do people from your communities find places to play? And those people within certain markets all over the country, how do they make those first steps? Mahad, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest thing is, I think it was a theme that was brought up a few times, but like your network, building your network by going to, you know, trade events, going to different shows, connecting with your peers in the industry to get the information, A, but B, to also exchange contacts. And maybe in the future, hey, you could have me open for this. Or there are things like school nights where there are, you know, perfect opportunities for new talent to get experience on stage for the industry. And there may be decision makers for or bookers, promoters that are watching and seeing you have a good show. That's a great opportunity in and of itself. I'm sorry, I think I was cutting out. Was everything froze here for me? I'm good. Okay, good. So yeah, those are, I think, the two best ways for me.
Yeah, a little bit. But I think it was pretty. Meeka, okay. I mean, you come from a much different perspective than all of us here, and for our Indigenous people and our Indigenous artists. What is the network like for those kind of communities and artists across the country? What you suggest are the best ways to go from playing that first show in your hometown to start thinking about expanding? Oh, you're muted, Meeka. Oh, I'm gonna unmute you. I can't. Yeah.
Sorry. I think for sure.
Okay.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good, Meeka. Grant, you're having a bit of a Wi-Fi lag there. Sorry.
I think for sure, because we do tend to, depending on the communities that we're presenting in, especially to give opportunities to local and emerging artists to get out into your local regions and become involved in the events that are going on and just make yourself more known. Also, because I'm in a performance group as well. And so when I get to go to other festivals as a performer and I watch other acts as my, I'm kind of wearing my artistic director hat too, and I'm observing and watching them. And so often I'll have an opportunity to just meet them personally and talk to them. And sometimes they'll get a hold of me right away. Sometimes they won't. So I find that ours is a lot of like personal connections and just developing and growing your fan base locally and regionally is really important to us. Yeah, I'd say those are probably the most important, is just kind of seeing how you're growing and what you're doing. Not that we're going to like be judgmental about what you're doing, but just that you're there's some sort of like there's evidence that you're working on what you're doing and you're working on your presence and your artistry, and that's important.
Right on. I think my internet is getting a little funky here. I'm gonna move if everyone doesn't mind.
While you're moving, I had one more thing there to recommend to. There are a lot of festivals that are asking for submissions. So definitely look out for those too. Like, for example, we have the TD Jazz Fest here in Toronto. There are different jazz fests around the city, if that's your type of music. There are different festivals that you can Google and search for that are looking for submissions too.
Yeah, and I also talk to a lot of our artists that we already work with and ask them to keep me connected with any new and emerging. I keep up with like the different agents that we work with. Even though we do prefer to communicate with the artists themselves, there are many times where some of our headliners where we exclusively kind of communicate with the agent. So I always ask them, do you have anyone on your roster that you think might fit what we're doing? And I just keep trying to kind of build the list of artists that are, from all over the place, and just keep getting more and more familiar with the new artists that come. And then it seems like the more that I become familiar with that, then more pops up and more pops up. And I'm always amazed how much is actually out there in what I felt was a limited what I felt was limited. And then when I start to really explore, there's just so much out there.
Everyone, sorry about that. My internet connection got a little crazy there. Thanks for all that insight. We really appreciate that. Jackie, I've got a quick question for you. We've got about 5 more minutes here. I've got a couple more questions we can answer. There's a couple here I can group together. Ryan has asked, what is the difference between soft and hard merch? And what's an appropriate charge for a merch seller to ask for? And what are some of the appropriate, I'd say, percentages that the venue or most times the venue will take? Can you comment on that, Jackie?
Yeah, hard merch is anything from pretty much like your CDs or CDs or vinyl, and then your soft merch would be t-shirts, swag. So that kind of breakout is sometimes they're the same. If it is a 85-15, 80-20, 75 split. So that would be the percentage that you take home and what the venue would keep. Your merch seller usually is a flat fee. It can anywhere from $75 to $200, let's say. I would say yes, 100, 125 is pretty on average. And that is a straight cost to the artist if this is that artist sells. Or you can bring your own merch seller. So this is probably an additional staff member who's brought in. Or in general, it's anywhere from $20 to $25 an hour. And you would typically want them there 30 minutes before doors and 30 minutes after the show performance while the venue is clearing out.
Right on. Yeah, pretty cut and simple. I mean, merch is a very big part of a tour budget. It can make or break a tour. So you'll find people like myself renegotiating those percentages quite often. There's artists that can sell $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 worth of merch, and taking a 10 to 25% cut is a really big cut on an artist end. So it's something that agents usually need to negotiate, and you need to negotiate in advance. If you're not happy with the merch percentage that you see on an offer, ask the promoter, can you do better? Can you do better? You always got to ask those questions. The worst case they're going to say is no, and you'll have to make a decision if you want to accept that.
Sometimes also, just to touch on that, is if if the venue is taking a cut, then they should be paying for the merch seller. So that's not an additional 100 or yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, my internet keeps going weird. Okay. I got one more. Can everyone still hear me right now? Am I good right now? Yeah. Okay. In relation to growing emerging artists, what are the methods to get attention of booking agents with the goal of gaining representation? Similar to what Meeka had mentioned, to reaching out to festivals. I guess I could probably answer that the best out of everybody here being an agent. And I do get this question asked a lot. I think agents get involved with artists for all sorts of different reasons. It might be artistic. It might be they're just a diamond in the rough, that they notice their talent and they want to get involved early on. I find agents usually jump on when they know what to do, and their network of buyers and connections can really benefit that artist. Some agents get involved because of financial reasons, because of money. They're making money and they want to get involved. I think another thing too is to remember that usually for myself and an agent at the level that I book at, agents like myself are usually good when you've hit a certain level. We don't really make sense when you're in that development phase. We really make a lot of sense once your business has grown and you're, say, developing into a national artist. That's where larger agencies or bigger agents or agents with a lot of connections, that's when they make the most sense. I tell a lot of younger artists that you're your best agent right now. You're the one that's going to be putting the passion and the time and the effort into your project because you love it so much. And that's the agents and the managers and all that stuff, that will come along if you've got great music, you've got some buzz, you've got a business. All those things play a part in terms of building a team. When does that happen? That's the big je ne sais quoi of what we do. We don't know when that's going to happen. I mean, that can happen with the first song you release. That can happen on the 7th album you put out. We all don't know that answer, all of us on this panel. And we're all chasing that, I think. I think everyone can kind of agree. Those are the things that we want to be a part of. And so that just a little bit of mention on that, Carice, thank you. One more question I had here, or two more, and then we'll call it there at 4:15, is to touch on Mahad's point, what Canadian or if known BC-based trade shows or expos would you suggest for upcoming festival promoters and or artists? Who would want to put their hand up there? I've got a few I could probably zoom off, but I'm sure, does anyone else have any suggestions? What's it, Meeka?
Last year, I think it was virtually, I went to Mondial, based in Montreal. And even though I had never been live and I went digitally and I wasn't sure how that would turn out, I made some really incredible connections there that ended up being quite fruitful. We were able to invite one of the artists a year later, Indigenous Sami artists that I had only chance met through that connection. And I found even though it was online and digital, I found the connections to be very very high quality. And because we were all in our own spaces rather than in a big city where it's, sure, it would be great to really go to Montreal and do that. But I found the quality of information to be really strong, and I was able to make some really good connections there. So I thought that was a really good one.
I think for anybody who's watching from BC or Western Canada, Breakout West is literally one of my favorite conferences in the country. I've discovered many artists there that I've been working with for a very long time and made many connections. I was there this year. It's not a huge conference. It's always got a very small footprint, and they do a very good job of making sure that people are connecting nonstop. And it was in Calgary this year. The venues were literally within a 5-minute walk, and you could just kind of go all the way around. That is a really great festival. Obviously, there's Canadian Music Week, which is one of the bigger ones in this country. There's also a very big network of performing arts centers and arts council showcases that happen in every single province in Montreal, in Quebec, and that's Trudeau. In Eastern Canada, that's Contact East. Here it's Ontario Contact, Ontario, Manitoba Arts Network, OSAC in Saskatchewan, the Alberta Touring Alliance in Alberta, and BCTC, which is the British Columbia Touring Alliance, did I get it right? They do Pacific Contact. These are all smaller. If you're in the sort of the theater world or performing arts, these are all very good conferences that you can apply to, you can attend. I think that's, the East Coast Music Awards would probably be very good. Pop Montreal has always been a very good one to connect with delegates from all over the world. M for Montreal is another great one. And I think that's it. Does anyone else on the panel remember any other ones that might be out there? Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah. I also encourage you all to join your local provincial music bodies, Manitoba Music, BC Music, Alberta Music, Music Ontario. These are all amazing resources. You can find great things if you're an up and coming artist. There's all sorts of things those people can help with. That's it for the questions. I also just want to say there's one, someone said here, hi, as a networking was mentioned, can we artist network with you? Absolutely. I don't think there's a person here on this panel that if you reached out to them, when they find some time, I mean, we're all very, very busy people. I always try and make time for everybody and anybody who would like to speak to me. I'm sure all the individuals on this panel would do the same thing. We're nothing in this industry without mentorship and without people like the people on this panel to give our time and our experience to young and aspiring musicians and music industry executives. That's it. I think we'll call it there. This has been a really great panel. Meeka, Mahad, Jackie, Emma, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time today. I know you're all very busy. It's a busy time in the music industry, as we all know, as we are finishing off the season. It's so good to be back. It's so good to see you all. And thank you for the Canadian Live Music Association, Maddie, Aaron, and Aaron for putting this together and inviting us all here today.